What's up, guys? Welcome back. Today is gonna be good. I'm really excited for this. As I was going through this and studying it, insights galore. Um, so we are starting habit one. Be proactive. Principles of personal vision. Now, I love this because, think of that title: Principles of Personal Vision. So this whole chapter, or habit one, is based in this idea of questioning your assumptions about how you view yourself. So going back to this idea of the maps and the territories, it's like questioning your assumption about how accurately your map describes your territory or who you actually are. So like the map being your perspective of yourself, and then the territory being who you actually are. And so how well does your map interpret that territory? How well does your perspective of yourself actually describe who you are? And I think especially in today's society, we have a distorted paradigm of ourselves. And so habit one is geared towards finding what is like becoming aware of that paradigm, and truly like understanding who we are and making that map of ourselves the most accurate that it can be, and like knowing who we are and our that's habit one, is principles of personal vision, which is amazing. And so Stephen Covey, he starts off doing this little experiment where he says imagine yourself up in the corner of the room, and you're looking down upon yourself, right? As if you were like somebody else looking at yourself. Like our ability to be able to do that activity, to do that mental process, is unique to us as humans. Like animals can't do that. It's this like self-awareness where like we have this capacity or capability to think about our own thought processes. So it's like our conscious and our subconscious. It's like we have this ability to think about the way that we think. Which animals don't have that. They just follow their instincts and the natural order of things. But we have this unique ability of self-awareness to be able to do that. Or we can even identify like our moods and our feelings and our states and like define those and label them, and then even shift our emotional states, like recognize that we're in a different state than we would like to be, and actually be able to shift ourselves back into that state. It's like really cool there. And that's like why as humans we have dominion over all the things of the earth, and like why we're the dominant species is because of these unique endowments, one of them being self-awareness. And so he says we have this ability to stand apart from ourselves, that we're not our feelings, we're not our moods, and we're not even our thoughts. And so self-awareness is what enables us to stand apart and examine the way that we see ourselves, our self paradigm, which is the most fundamental paradigm I can't talk right now. Effectiveness. There we go. Got it out. I have a stutter, so usually it's not that bad though. That's weird. But anyways, so what's really cool about this self paradigm though is that because we tend to view the world through that lens, whenever we interpret or evaluate different scenarios or people or actions or ideas, and we interpret those and evaluate those, we in effect are not actually describing that idea or that action or that circumstance or that person, but we're actually describing ourselves and our own lenses through which we're seeing that person. That's why this paradigm is the most fundamental, because it is through this self paradigm that we see everything else. And so how we describe everything else is going to be in a reflection of our own lens that we have on. Like, for example, if I have blue glasses on, right? Like, and then I say that the wall is blue. Well, is the wall actually blue? Maybe, but it's probably white, right? But like, so by me saying the wall is blue and like stating that as if it's objective, as if it's accurate, well, like, it's not actually accurate. I'm just describing my lens. So that's like the best way I can describe this of how that actually plays into like effect. And so that's a very simple example, but it gets way more complex when we start describing people and like situations. And so in effect, we're not actually describing the wall, we're describing ourselves and our own lens that through which we're looking through. And so it affects not only our attitudes and behaviors, but like also how we see other people. It becomes our map of the basic nature of mankind. And so that's like really cool. And he says how like until we take the time to analyze that and like how we see ourselves and how we see others, we actually will be unable to understand how others see and feel about themselves. So until we understand our own self paradigm, we won't understand how other people view themselves. Because if we're constantly looking through our lens, we're always going to interpret other people's feelings and actions through that lens. And until we can become self-aware and stand apart from that paradigm and truly enter into the paradigm of another person, of another frame of reference, until we can do that, we're not actually going to be able to understand people at a deep level to where we see the lens or we see the world through their lens. And that's like really, really powerful to be able to do that. And if we don't do that, then like unaware thinking, like we think that we're being objective. And so unaware, we're actually going to like project our intentions and like we're going to project our intentions and like our desires and our interpretations on their behavior, and we're going to call that objective, as he's saying here. So essentially, we're going to say that wall is blue and it's objective. So it's like we're projecting our own intentions or desires onto this person or these circumstances, right? Like, I guess a more complex example of this would be like if I said, oh, that person's behavior is stupid, right? Like, what am I actually saying? I'm actually saying, like, I view that action as stupid because of the lens that I have on, because of my conditioning and experience in life and choices, and the lens I have chosen to put on through my actions. Like, I am interpreting that action as stupid. Whereas if I threw on their lens and their frame reference, maybe it's not actually a stupid move. Like, it actually might be like a good move, right? And so it just depends on how aware we are that we may assume things are objective when they're actually not, because the lens that we have on, and we're not aware we have those lenses on. Pretty cool. So like you can see why that would significantly limit our potential and our ability to relate to others and to build meaningful relationships. If we keep interpreting that relationship through our lens and we don't take the time to look at it through their lens, problems may and will arise. So unless it's like based on a reality or a principle based, then like it's not going to work out super well. Which brings us to the next section, which is the social mirror. We're going to talk about this social mirror and then we'll end this episode. The social mirror is a very fascinating idea for me. In other books, he mentions a counterpart, which is the divine mirror. So we have the social mirror and the divine mirror. The social mirror is this paradigm of ourselves that we derive from external sources or society. So that's why it's called the social mirror. So he says like if the vision of ourselves comes from like the current social paradigm or from the opinions, perceptions, and paradigms of other people that are around us. He refers it to like those mirrors that will like distort your body to where like your legs are like super tall or your torso is like fat or like your face is like coned in, right? Like those kind of mirrors. And so like it's not an actual like the mirror is showing that, but is that an actual like objective reality? No, it's not. Like you're a normal human being, but if you were to look at yourself in that mirror, you would think you were this wild, ferocious, or like just like weird person, like the disformed figure. But that's not actually the case. And so if like no, the problem is that that's how other people perceive us through their lenses because they don't have all the information, they don't have all the facts, and they're honestly viewing us through their lenses, which their lenses aren't even accurate. And so if we derive our self-worth and our like potential and personal vision of ourself and our self-paradigm from the lenses of other people and their perceptions, it's being filtered not only through their lens, but then through our lens again. And so it's like this like double misconfigured, distorted reality or perception that isn't actually real. That's not reality. It's not objective. And so that's kind of like the social mirror. He talks about here like saying, "Oh, like you're never on time. Why can't you ever keep things in order? You must be an artist. You eat like a horse. I can't believe you won. This is so simple. Why can't you understand?" Like all of these things are like, he says they're disjointed and out of proportion. Like they're more like these projections rather than reflections. They're more like their interpretation of what's happening rather than like the actual reality of what is happening and who you actually are. He says they are often more projections than reflections, projecting the concerns and character weaknesses of people giving the input rather than accurately reflecting what we are. So like going back to my example of like, oh, that behavior's stupid, right? It's like, okay, yeah, you're looking at it through that lens, but it also reflects a character weakness in me in saying that because I'm not seeking to understand your frame of reference, which is a character flaw in me. So essentially, those words are me describing myself rather than me describing that person's behavior. Kind of a cool concept when you really take time to think about this. Really, really cool. So he says that there is a tremendous power and influence of our self paradigm that comes from conditioning and experience in like our previous years or so or whatever. So I want to clarify something that our past conditioning and life experiences and even genetics do not determine that self paradigm. Because we are self awareness, we can break habits. We can instill in ourselves new thought process and train ourselves to become better. And so, although those conditioning and influences may have a high influence, it does not control that self paradigm or even determine that self paradigm. It is only a influence. So he says that there are three social maps that probably and most likely do influence our self paradigm, the way that we view ourselves, and that those are genetic determinism, psychic determinism, and then environmental determinism. And again, he uses the word determinism, but it's like it doesn't actually determine what you're saying, and it's just like these social maps. So these social maps are saying, like through the lens of these social maps and the way people typically think, they're like putting it up out there as objective and determining when in reality it's not. So I just want to make that clear that it says determinism because this is like through the lens of the world, through the lens of society. And so it's projecting that it is determining when in reality, the objective map says it's not determining. So genetic determinism says it's in your DNA. Your grandparents did it to you. So the reason you have such a temper or the reason you drink so much is because your family does it or your ancestors do it. It's just in your DNA. You can't help it. So like he says like you're Irish and that's the nature of Irish people, right? And like you can't change that. Or that's like an American thing. You just can't change it. Psychic determinism says that your parents did it to you in your upbringing, your childhood experience. Essentially this idea of your nurture versus nature, right? And so like your character structure, your personality, tendencies, they're all like deeply scripted by the way you grew up, which does have a heavy influence on the way that you act and behave. That is true. But again, is it a determining factor? I don't believe so. And then environmental determinism is nurture. So like your boss is doing it to you, or your spouse, or that bratty teenager, or like your finances, or this like political event, or like a neighbor, right? It's saying like your environment is influencing you, which again it does, but it does not determine who you are at your fundamental core. So there's that. It's saying like someone or something in your environment is responsible for your situation. That's what environmental determinism is. And so he says that like each of these is based in this philosophy or theory of this stimulus and response idea, and which is most often associated with Pavlov's dogs, right? Where like you're conditioned to respond to a certain way. So like they would ring the bell and the dogs would drool, right? What's it called? Salivate or whatever that's called. So like animals would do that because they were conditioned to do that. We train them to do that. But we ourselves actually have this ability to choose our response to stimulus, which we'll go into further detail in the next episode. I'm really excited for that. That's the next section. But he's saying that these three things, so genetic determinism, environmental determinism, and psychic determinism, derive themselves from this idea of stimulus and response theory. Whereas like we are conditioned to respond in a particular way to a particular stimulus. Okay, so that's how that is. But then he asks these questions, which are really, really cool actually. He asks, how accurately and functionally do these deterministic maps describe the territory? How clearly do these mirrors reflect the true nature of man? Do they become self-fulfilling prophecies? Are they based on principles we can validate within ourselves? So what I thought was really cool about that is like just like questioning our assumptions, right? Like, are these theories, do they truly hold true? Can we validate them within our own experiences and within ourselves? Like what society is saying about me, is that actually true? Which is also where this idea of this divine mirror comes from. And in some other writings of Stephen Covey, he mentions it, where it's like within ourselves, like our true nature. Where like if we can learn to develop our self-paradigm to where it is derived from this divine mirror, from who we actually are, right? And that like principles come from within us, and that non-principles are like without us. And so it's like external, which is why this whole book is based in this whole idea of this inside-out approach. Is as you become principle-centered, you learn to look within to define who you are, rather than to look without or externally to define who you are. And so that's like a really cool differentiation or distinction between those two things. And why like becoming principle-centered is so important is because it's balanced in this production capability idea of doing the inside-out approach, where if you focus on the PC, on you, investing in yourself and looking within, in defining who you are and adopting that self paradigm, then that's much more effective and powerful and motivating and secure and peaceful and exhilarating than by just focusing on production, and like looking externally, right? Or like defining yourself by what society says. So like by the clothes you wear, by what you do, by your net worth, right? Like by who your family is, like all of those things. Really cool concept in this, and I'm excited to go further into it in this next episode. And I actually like learned a ton going through this, and then teaching it to you guys. It just like really is solidifying it. So just like really cool stuff here that I'm learning, and so thank you guys for hopping on, and leave a comment or ask me if you guys have any questions. I'm more than happy to clarify anything if it wasn't super clear. But appreciate it, guys. Enjoy.